Salinas Grande is a salt flat, the remnant of a vanished lake, in the territory of the provinces of La Rioja, Córdoba, Catamarca and Santiago del Estero in the northwest of Argentina. It is located in a tectonic depression in the Pampas between the Sierra de Ancasti and Sierra Córdoba massifs. It has an area of approximately 6,000 square kilometers. It is 250 kilometers long and 100 kilometers wide. It lies at an altitude of 170 meters. The bottom of the lake contains a large amount of soda ash and potassium carbonate. Probes for the yield of lithium deposits are currently underway here. Salinas Grande is not the only salt flat on the west coast of South America. Many others can also be found in the Atacama Desert and the Andes Mountains. It is a complex of prehistoric lakes that were created here during the biblical Armageddon. As I mentioned in previous videos, salt did not exist on Earth in ancient times. From the philosophical writings of Plato we learn that the world's seas were not salty. If we think about the biblical texts that describe the destruction of Sodom and the transformation of Lot's wife into salt, we can guess that this event did not concern Lot's wife, but the entire population of the planet at that time. The overwhelming majority of lithium is found precisely on these salt flats. As we have also said, lithium is created due to the great heat and radiation that affects the metal. We can be almost certain that urban agglomerations with high-rise reinforced concrete structures existed on these huge areas. So let's see what the scans of this area reveal and compare them to other findings as well. Not all sites show the same destruction, and the shadows of many of them appear beneath the excavated hills. From a height, the plain does not seem very large. But look at the mountain slopes here. These are very old lahar flows, which are very numerous in the Andes. Old mud flows can also be found on the Nazca Plain. We will start by exploring the southern part of the plain. Here are the traces of the earth grate on which the gigantic slabs lay. Most have disappeared, but traces of some still remain. Many of these remnants today form natural pathways. Some are used to build transportation routes, as we will see in the Everglades example. Some of them have been swallowed up by vegetation and some are still visible as in the area. Crossings and junctions have been preserved in places. Let's take a look again at how these plates and grates originally looked. This is a find from the Gulf of Kutch, India. Plato left a trace and writes that people carved channels into the slabs. The exposed area is incredibly well preserved. For comparison, I added a picture from the salt pan on the border of Bolivia and Chile. This area is very unusual, because here the settlement literally sank below the Earth's surface and a salt lake was created here. We find mention of it in some versions of the Bible. I quote, "And the cities of the kings fell." I will come back to this place soon with a comment. This is how large pieces of plates fell in the western part of the Sahara east of the Eye of the Sahara. Fragments of grates are also visible in this image. The boards have almost disappeared or been swept away. In this image, we see how the plates were shifting, melting and literally tearing apart with great pressure and heat. But our civilization uses these areas again to build new cities. This is how Venice was also built. The Venetian lagoon hides very old water channels, sunken slabs and more. Remains of stone gratings are still found at the bottom of the Venetian Bay. But there are no slabs here. It is likely that a large number is constantly moving deep beneath our feet. Tectonic plates. Empty pools formed in the areas where the slabs were lost. They were originally covered by a layer of limestone. but the mining industry extracts lithium and other minerals here. However, some grates have become part of the rock, like this one on the mountainous slope of Lake Urmia. And finally the Yucatan Peninsula, which is interwoven with a network of sinkholes and also the remains of the Earth grid. No. This isn't really the Titanic, but the wreckage of a grate sticking out of the land. It was part of the Old World, and you would find its continuation under our feet. It's covered in sediment. But it's beautiful to me. Let's go back to Salinas Grande. This is a photo of the pools, and lithium is mined here. We see some tracks in the pool. They are not very deep here. An example of a lithium mine. Partitions are real earth grids hidden beneath the surface. Mining must respect them, and pools copy them. They are so large that a 2-lane road can be built on them. And in some cases even wider. The partitions are very likely made of basalt, which is resistant to high temperatures and also to seawater. It is still used in the construction of dikes in Holland. Basalt also mentions the Bible. I don't need to explain how much environmental devastation mining causes. And all this in order to have green energy. Really green? We continue our search in Salinas Grande. Mud flows and salt devastation are evident in the surrounding hills, and not only that. The whole looks like a bizarre painting. The edge of the salt marsh is lined with strange lines that end at the bottom of the former lake. In detail, we can see that something has sunk to the bottom of the lake here. Only salt crusts remained at the site of the dive. Probably another piece of stone bulkhead. Some areas are covered by Google Earth, as we'll show later. Sometimes scrolling through the timeline at the top left doesn't help either. This is where we get into interesting areas like this. We are probably looking at one of the boards that survived. What caused her to turn black is the question. But in many similar areas it can be asphalt embedded in rock. Elsewhere it almost copies the visible lines of the roads. And here we begin to see something in the salt marsh. They are geometric shapes covered in salt. Certainly this gigantic area is not the work of miners. So yeah, let's go back a bit and look again at the strange lines that end in the salt flat. And look carefully. And this is a screenshot from the Bloomberg video. Notice this line. He crosses the dike and continues behind her. And here you can compare both images. It's one and the same. It is not the result of mining operations, but is many thousands of years old and was part of the lake bed. What is it about? In the first photo, we saw an incomplete grate, which was destroyed due to the shifting of the rock. In the Bloomberg photo, we see the pools, the edges of which are formed by stone partitions. They are also not complete, some have been pulled out by an unknown force. Mining works copy these stone grates. If these beautiful Indian plates were not preserved, we would also see only pools here, as in the case of lithium mines. These earth grids are located in the Aral Sea in Kazakhstan. You wouldn't notice them at first glance. After highlighting, you can clearly see the entire destruction below them. They were probably swept away by water during the flood and sudden petrification. Earth grates held the boards above the water and were suspended from gigantic poles. We can imagine what a terrifying event it was. One more look at the dry bottom of the Aral Sea, which reveals an ancient disaster. In the second image, in the upper part of the photo, a wave of petrified water can be seen pushing this debris in front of it. Just like we saw in the Peruvian Andes. Yes, our mountains are biblical sea waves. We can find similar devastation on every continent. Now we will continue again to Salinas Grande. We are heading from the southeast to the northern part of the plain. It is difficult to determine exactly what we are looking at. The pictures are not of very good quality. We are watching from a virtual height of more than 3 kilometers. A strange tangle of paths that end in a salt flat, looking like broken glass. They resemble lines that converge to Australian wells. I mentioned their origin on this channel. And again, traces of stone partitions, which we already saw in the Bloomberg video. In this area, part of the grate appears to have been preserved, and is buried under a layer of sediment and salt. We will also look in detail at this area. The main road, if we can talk about a road, is lost in the salt marsh. Other lines follow it, as if in chaos, and seem to have no purpose. In these places, it is practically impossible to talk about roads. Notice the devastation, which looks more like an extinguished fire. Everything is preserved in stone. Another area with the same lines. But here we look at what is found at the end of some of them in the salt flat. They are connected to the remains of the grate in the brine. As you can see, the edge of the salt plain looks literally scribbled. We even have a heart here. We are watching from a height of more than 4 kilometers. This is the road that crosses the salt flat. In many similar places, These roads copy the bars of the grid. It is very beautiful to see, for example, in the Everglades. This is because these stone beams are very strong. Here, too, traces are visible in the surroundings. View of another covered beam field. You can see that the mining work has started here, and this place will soon be turned into geometric pools. For the sake of interest, we will look at the road that was built across the Everglades. It was built on a huge stone beam. In the photo you can see connected water channels, which are geometrically accurate. Red marks indicate non-functional locations. Here there were vertical bars and the whole formed a grid. The partitions were torn out. And here is the detail. The anchoring of the side partitions is still visible. Today we could be looking at lithium pools in this area. However, this vast area was literally torn apart. We reach the most interesting part of Salinas Grande. Traces of a technologically advanced civilization that was very similar to ours. The concurrence of biblical events was the cause of the complete obliteration of all traces from the Earth's surface. Only with digital technology can we learn more. The reason we can't find evidence of a major modern civilization on our planet is because several factors were at work. A flood, probably in the form of huge tsunamis due to the jump of the magnetic pole, a sudden petrification, which could have been caused by a change in the position of the Earth's axis, and then a large solar eruption that melted everything. According to the Sumerian tablets, humans also unleashed a nuclear war. But there's something else we'll talk about at the end of the video. Note that the man holding the bomb is depicted as a king. That is, the ruler or the president. We are literally looking at the shadows of houses and streets. Everything looks ironed. Many buildings turned into a lump of stone. The asphalt melted into the surroundings. Today, we would no longer say that it was a city with high-rise buildings and steel structures. Left over are salt, lithium and other minerals. We also find these shapes on this salt flat. They look like brush strokes and can be found all over the planet. They are part of watercourses and wetlands. The same undulating patterns can be found, for example, in Battle Creek, Saskatchewan, Canada. There are several of them and they are part of the rock. The deformation is obvious and probably took place due to the great heat. Another deformation comes from Nevada. It is probably a plate and it is beautiful to see how it has been completely torn apart by the heat and has become part of the rock. And one more picture from the same area in Nevada. We are looking at a perfect oval that has a start on the left side, or an approach if you will. It may be a canal. But many of the same structures can also be found in contemporary architecture. It resembles a sports stadium, but is about 4 times larger. We will return to the last part of the Salinas Grande section. The lines will lead us safely to the sites of the finds. Some appear suddenly and end abruptly in brine and calcareous deposits. Salty white in places transitions into a black area. Since we are looking at the scan, this may indeed be very old melted asphalt that has become part of the rock. We have already seen similar blackened areas in other finds that showed traces of complex transport routes. You would not notice the following geometric lines at all. There are the remains of a grate. The geometric shapes are not the work of nature. For example, look at the beautiful grid geometry in Salt Lake, Utah. Unfortunately, Google Earth still obscures some areas by blurring the image, overlaying a black area, and even overlaying places with older images. Most of the dark lines connect the incriminated areas, where we can guess the devastated urban infrastructure. Like in this picture. You might be thinking that these are not the ruins of a settlement. However, We are looking from a height of less than 4 kilometers. The whole area went through hell, leaving only puddles of rock, if we can call it that. The work of destruction was completed by the enormous pressure of water and sediments over many thousands of years. Some areas are truly exceptional, like this one. It is full of geometric shapes, some hidden under the sediments but still very well visible. We can imagine that we are looking at molten and petrified buildings. Everything moved on the liquid stone and formed bizarre geometric clusters. One more look at the remains of the stone grate. The mainland part has sunk in, and it's nice to see how these partitions supported the world above. Beneath them was not stone, but water. And here we say goodbye to Salinas Grande and we will look at the opposite side of our world. You may now be wondering why we moved on to Giza. This is because not everything has been completely destroyed, and people admiring the pyramids have no idea that they are walking on one of the greatest mysteries and also one of the greatest archaeological finds. In the Bible, God commanded his angels to paint the boards with lime. In other words, everything that was covered with lime was preserved. The heat burned the lime into limestone, which preserved, for example, the pipes in Bygong, but also preserved the outlines of streets, houses and squares in the South American Atacama Desert. Artifacts in Egypt have also been preserved in the same way. Giza is a man-made limestone hill that hides thousands of years-old buildings that have literally been cut up. They became part of the mound and today are considered a shelter for Egyptian slaves. However, highlighted satellite images say otherwise. By the way, in Bible prophecy, Sodom is referred to as the territory we call Egypt. So let's look at the real Sodom. The satellite image presented in this way does not tell us anything. These are the buildings next to the pyramids, but not the whole buildings, but their walls. After highlighting the image, something else appears. Ruins of buildings are scattered one over the other. Everything was thrown into quicklime by an unknown force and burned by the heat. However, these buildings were protected by limestone. And here is the highlighting of the edges, which gives a clear idea of how the lime flowed. The same view is also found in a Google Earth image of the area around the Sumerian ziggurat structure in Iraq. Most of the panels have preserved windows. That is, on those that remained rather on the surface. Pictured or other debris embedded deeper into the limestone. Here you can see that some of the panels lie deeper below the surface. The larger blocks buried here may be the uprooted foundations of houses. These large panels are laid neatly and really resemble apartment buildings and streets. Where did these houses come from? From the wide area around Cairo, where a new city is now being built. However, the city is completely different. It has beautiful architecture. Do you want to know how the new Cairo is being built? Next time we will see her in a new video. Thank you all for your patience and subscription.